Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening and welcome. My name is Jock Reynolds, the director of the Yale University Art Gallery, and I want to welcome you this evening for the first of two wonderful Ryerson lectures that are going to celebrate something very special happening here at this teaching museum. Tonight we're going to hear from Quentin Buvelot, who is the senior curator at the Royal Picture Gallery at Mauritshuis in The Hague. And then tomorrow night, Quentin will be back on this stage. He'll be joined by Larry Cantor, our chief curator and curator of European art down here. He'll be joined by myself and also two Dutch specialists, Peter Sutton and Otto Neumann, who both trained here and received their PhDs in Dutch art and Dutch history. And we will be introduced tomorrow night by yet another graduate of Yale with a great specialty in Dutch art, John Walsh, who's been a big factor in making this wonderful project possible. But the real group we'll be meeting with tomorrow, and reason to be here, is with Rosemary and Eijk van Otterloo, who've made all of this possible. So welcome tonight to all of you, and thank you, Rosemary and Eijk. About 2 decades ago, this couple began collecting 17th century Dutch painting. Together, they have now assembled what is today one of the world's greatest private collections of paintings from the golden age of Dutch art. And through the generosity of the Otterloos, we now have 30 of their great pictures out of a collection approaching some 70 works installed upstairs on the second floor of our European art galleries. Larry Cantor had the time of his life installing those 2 galleries and has just been gleeful along with John ever since they've been placed on view. And I just want to say that John Walsh is also a big part of what made this happen. He is a friend of the Otterloos. When he heard that we were reopening and saw the state of our collections with great strengths in early Italian art and later art, he, as a Dutch specialist, knew there were great gaping holes in the area of Dutch art. And he said, I think I know someone who might be willing to loan us some terrific pictures for a couple years so that we can teach closely and well with slow looking at Dutch paintings in the best circumstances one could imagine. And that's in fact what we have here before us. I have to say, John, that I've never seen you looking quite as happy as you have teaching in those galleries. And to those of you in the audience, let it be known, John did 4 sessions yesterday of close looking, 2 today. He's doing 2 more tomorrow. And John has been the longtime great educator on the gallery's governing board. He has helped us in so many ways bring both undergraduates, graduate students, and young school children from throughout New Haven and other colleges into this museum, and has been an absolute master teacher. He will be delivering 6 public lectures this spring based on the Van Otterloo collection, and he has also agreed to teach an undergraduate seminar in the History of Art department on the golden age of Dutch painting. And whenever John teaches a course, it's immediately oversubscribed. So the word that's gotten out already that this is being offered is creating quite a stir amongst undergraduates. And John, I don't know how you're going to sort it out, but we'll let that problem rest with you. So let it be said that since we reopened this wonderful facility in 12/12/12 a couple years ago, we've now had a chance to take a lot more time to slow people down in front of great works of art, because engaging original works of art, doing so carefully, thinking about how they've been made, the materials that have brought them into being, the styles of the artists that have made these works possible, and the historical context in which they take place have all been a part of what this great teaching museum in Yale is about. Transferring knowledge from one generation to the other, and to do so as best we can. So tonight, Quentin, it's wonderful to have you here, because there's no one better to speak about this collection. He's come here all the way from The Hague, and he's going to tell us tonight about the history of the Van Otterloo's collection. And there was no one better to do this lecture, because as the senior curator at Mauritshuis, he, a number of years ago, in 2011, curated the first public exhibition of the Van Otterloo collection. And he was the first one to display the couple's collection along with a wonderful catalog, and I just happen to have it here. Here it is, Made in Holland, highlights from the collection of Eijk and Rosemary Delmore van Otterloo. It's been an invaluable reference to many people, and I'm happy to say we have a whole number of these at the front desk of the art gallery. So if you do want to purchase one, that is a possibility. And Quentin is a master in old, expert in old master paintings, and he's curated many important exhibitions at the Mauritshuis, so we're delighted to have you here tonight. And Following your presentation tonight, we're all going out into the Mayor Gallery where you can ask any questions you want of this distinguished group of people and hopefully enjoy this great lecture he's about to deliver for us now. It's entitled Made in Holland, Collected in the USA, the collection of Rosemarie and Eijk van Otterloo. Quentin, be our guest. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy to be here with you. I'm really happy that Eijk and Rosemarie are here. I think we are all in for a treat. And I mean, seeing these paintings, familiar paintings here at Yale Art Gallery, I think it's really marvelous to see them here. I think it's a beautiful installation, and I think the museum here did a really good job. And this exhibition, this collection, you know, this really is an extraordinary collection. This is not just any collection of Dutch paintings. Rosemarie and Eijk, they are true art lovers. And it was already mentioned by Jock, in just over 20 years, they have assembled a collection of major works by 17th century Dutch masters, and these paintings could hang in the best museums in the world. The exhibition here presents pieces of exceptional quality and with a wide range of subject matter from masters, and I pronounce them in the Dutch way, I will do it slowly, Frans Hals, Paulus Potter, Jan Steen, Jacob van Ruisdael, and many others. The exhibition, I think, offers us a unique opportunity to admire these treasures from this private collection, but also to get acquainted with the explosion of talent that took place within the cities of the Dutch Republic in the 17th century. And many of you, of course, know where this small country is, but for those of us who don't, it's, you know, in front of you. I think what happened in the Golden Age is still something of a miracle. There were a lot of wealthy people and there were a lot of good painters that could sort of like make paintings that filled the houses of these rich citizens. And that is really one of the miracles that happened in the Dutch Republic. And I think it's one of the miracles of Western art. So many paintings of such a high quality made in this small country. Usually the collection is on the East Coast, not far from Boston, and that is a region where several other collectors live who have focused on Dutch 17th century art. And if you would visit Eijk and Rosemarie, and here they are, you find yourself facing famous Dutch masters. And what strikes me is that these works not only present very attractive scenes, but that each painting, without exception, is in outstanding condition. And that is a criterion that the collectors have emphasized increasingly over the years. The paintings are displayed in an interior that is partly furnished with fine items of original furniture from the Dutch Golden Age. Still, notwithstanding all the care lavished on this interior, the house is no museum, and I would like to quote Rosemarie, who said to me, and I quote, "We live with our collection. This is our home," end of quote. So, the couple's children and grandchildren enjoy coming to visit, and they sort of have come to take these beautiful surroundings for granted. For me, the house is an ideal place to lose yourself in the past. After all, these paintings were originally made to be hung in private homes, and even in a modern home such as this one, they can clearly be seen to fine advantage. What people tend to forget is that the collection has never been together in one place, as the couple lent generously, now to a temporary exhibition here at Yale, but also to permanent presentations at museums in the United States and Europe. Museum directors and curators, such as myself, but also many others, always find the owners obliging when applying for loans for an exhibition. And anyone who studies the exhibition history of these paintings will see that they are frequently selected for major shows in all parts of the world. And in 2010, it was already mentioned by Jock, the Mauritshuis was fortunate enough to be the first venue for a traveling exhibition of the collection. And this is what it looked like, the Mauritshuis rooms with the paintings owned by Eijk and Rosemarie. Curating the show at the Mauritshuis gave me the opportunity to discuss the genesis of the collection with the owners. And they gave me a warm welcome in their house. I have very fond memories of that particular visit. After being shown in The Hague, the paintings traveled to the Peabody Essex Museum, shown here in Salem. Then other venues were the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco, and then the last stop was the Museum of Fine Arts in Houston. And here we see some of the original furniture from the Dutch Golden Age. Before discussing the history of the collection, which is the main topic of my lecture, I would first like to introduce some of his masterpieces. Browsing through the collection, we can find, for instance, this very sweet, fluffy mouse. This is a painting by Willem van Aalst. And this is a very small painting in reality, so this is really enlarged many times. Another small painting is this one by Gerrit Douw. I just love this dog. I just love this dog. Of course, we are not allowed to touch any paintings, but this is one of the paintings. I need to, I shouldn't touch it, but you almost want to stroke the dog. And in addition to winter landscapes, we find many sunlit scenes, such as this attractive June landscape by Paulus Potter. And the goat in the middle with the two frolicking kids, it must have been based on what the artist had seen while walking around in the Dutch countryside. Check out this detail. I mean, that particular detail. And we know that Potter made many drawings while walking, so we don't know the drawing for this particular painting. Daily life is represented in many paintings. For instance, in this Old Fiddler by Frans van Mieris. He was the best pupil of Douw. I particularly like this study of a young girl by Salomon de Braai. And actually all the main subjects of 17th century Dutch painting are represented in the collection. Eijk and Rosemarie van Otterloo clearly feel a connection with what is often called the visible world. Landscapes, they are the largest part of the collection, but also portraits, still lifes, and genre paintings. There are also a few history paintings, but scenes from classical antiquity or Greek mythology are almost completely absent. Just a few paintings are there with this kind of subject matter. And an unexpected highlight is Orpheus Charming the Animals, which is a large landscape by Albert Cuyp, and it shows a scene based on a passage from Ovid. It's one of the rare history paintings made by the Dordrecht landscape painter, and it is among his earliest masterpieces. The two leopard cubs in the foreground resemble cuddly pets. You have something with animals, I think, Rosemarie and Eijk. And these pets, they stare at us, while Orpheus is playing a tune on his violin, persuading the animals to keep still. And if you look carefully, you see a small mouse at his feet. As I already mentioned, the Dutch landscape is remarkably well represented in the collection, as Eijk and Rosemarie love wide open views of nature. And this actually typifies 3 works they bought for the collection, made by the greatest landscape painter ever in the Netherlands, Jacob van Ruisdael. They acquired a winter landscape, shown here, a large wooded landscape, and a painting of Haarlem. And this winter scene shows the typical Dutch windmills at the center of a group of houses on the bank of a frozen waterway. The gray atmosphere is rendered with great subtlety. In Van Ruisdael's day and age, winters were still very cold. Nowadays, each winter, we rarely have snow for more than a week in the Netherlands. So this is the way it was, and I don't know if we will get a severe winter this year. This wooded landscape is a textbook example of a landscape from the so-called classical period of Dutch landscape painting. From the 1650s onwards, Van Ruysdael had a marked preference for larger formats and stronger color contrast, while the dramatic nature of scenes was emphasized by the painter. And finally, and this is really a rare painting, a view of Haarlem. This is quite a rare example, I think, of a type of painting that in 17th century inventories was classified as, and this is Old Dutch, Haarlempje, meaning view of Haarlem. Ruysdael actually only produced a dozen of such panoramas of the landscape behind the dunes around Haarlem, so paintings like these are rare and much sought after. The work of Salomon van Ruysdael, presented here, Jacob's uncle and one of his teachers, is also well represented with two paintings, and these show how Van Ruysdael, so the uncle of Jacob, painted the Dutch polder landscape in all its facets. And this well-preserved river landscape that was probably made in 1655 demonstrates the painter's great talent. The scene has been made rapidly in confident brushstrokes using only a limited palette. And if you look carefully, the ground has been left partly visible, and this ground layer actually plays a prominent part in the painting's tonality. You see that shimmering through the water and also in the sky if you stand in front of the painting. In the spring of 2008, the couple acquired a splendid winter landscape, this painting by Aert van der Neer. It presents a delightful picture of a snow shower, a motif that was actually very seldom depicted by Dutch painters in the Golden Age. I show you a detail. I hope you can see it, but actual snow is depicted. It's something you actually very rarely see. It's of course a lot of work, you know, if you have to paint that in your landscape. This painting is actually part of a group of winter scenes. I showed you the Van Ruysdael earlier on. There was also a winter landscape by Van Gooyen, and also a work by, I call him the winter painter, Hendrik Averkamp, and he is represented in the collection with a true masterpiece. This is really something we don't have in the Mauritshuis. Besides the low-lying Dutch countryside, we also see the Italian landscape depicted in works by artists such as Berghem, Bot, Pijnacker, which is here in the exhibition, and Karel Dujardin. All these works have one thing in common. They all idealize the warmth and light of a summer afternoon in the Italian countryside. I continue. Seascapes by Willem van der Velde the Younger. They show the Dutch Republic as a seafaring nation. Look at this beautiful painting of fishermen by the shore. Lovers of seascapes are actually well catered for. Eijk and Rosemarie bought exquisite paintings by Jan van de Capelle. I will discuss this work later on. Jan Porcellus and Simon de Vlieger. There's so much more to be seen because there is a separate still life section in the present exhibition. And you see many works by, for instance, Balthazar van der Ast, Ambrosius Bossart, Adriaan Koorte, and actually this painting by Bossart has lots of details that you need to study. It's a very small painting, but if you see that painting, you can only conclude that Bossart was a meticulous observer of nature, not only judging from the roses, but actually if you see the animals that were added to the still life. You see a caterpillar, a butterfly, a dragonfly, a fly. It's the one, you know, over there. But these are details. You have to study these paintings. There is so much detail in these works. Actually, sometimes I look at paintings and I thought I saw every detail of these works, and then you discover an extra animal, and well, of course, these animals are very clearly depicted, but in other works you have to look for them. Also, Jan de Heem is represented with a major work, and that is actually quite something, because Eijk and Rosemarie managed to acquire one of the rare flower still lifes by de Heem, and he only made like a dozen of these works, so he is really famous in the art history, but this work is really quite rare. It also shows all kinds of details, including, I hope you can see it, the reflection of a stained glass window. And actually, it must have been the window of the artist's studio. This great attention to details also demonstrated in another still life by Willem Heda. And what is so typical for this artist, that all the different materials are depicted convincingly, from smooth objects, I call them, such as plates or glass, to the more grainy skin of the lemon. And below right, you can see the smoking rope that the Dutch used to light their pipes. That's the detail over here. It's a smoking rope in order to light their pipes, because all these people smoked in the 17th century. In the portrait section, our attention is immediately drawn by a masterpiece by Rembrandt, which is the portrait of Aaltje Uilenburg, and I will discuss her later. Indeed, yes, I'm not going to discuss the Rembrandt now, because first I would like to talk about this portrait by Frans Hals, a very small painting, now reproduced much larger than it actually is, and this was made around 1660, when Hals was in his late 70s, but still at the height of his powers. And the facial expression of the man painted against a plain background has been captured, I think, very convincingly. The very loose brushwork in the man's face and hand, and I'm showing you a detail, is characteristic for the late work by Hals. And it's so different, and these works are now in the same room in the present exhibition. It's so different when you would compare it to this self-portrait by Gerrit Douw, in which every detail is meticulously rendered down to the light reflections on the artist's nails. So really, you should see that painting. It's really full of details, and it does include these reflections on his nails. I'm going to show her one more time in order to explain the difference between portraits and tronies, because tronies, which are studies of faces, are well represented in the collection with works by Bakker and Lievens, and this work by Salomon de Braai. And these studies were never intended as a portrait, and I think this really is a delightful painting, and again, in reality, it's really small. Everyday life is at the heart of the work produced by many painters represented in the collection. I would like to single out this church interior. There are many church interiors in the collection by Pieter Saenredam, by Gerrit Hoekgeest, and Emmanuel de Witte, and he's the painter of this magnificent work. He shows us the surroundings in which Dutch society celebrated its religious life. And this is a known church, it's the Old Church in Amsterdam, and that was actually one of the painter's favorite subjects. Light is streaming in from all sides of the monumental building, and it still is there today, but I think this is really marvelous what he did with the light reflection. Well, I promised you to talk about the history of the collection, and that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going back to, well, to their marriage in 1974, when Eijk and Rosemarie actually started by collecting not paintings, but rather antique carriages and English sporting prints for an attractively furnished farmhouse in New Hampshire. And they collected everything that was related to horses and farms, and it was actually only after their move to a seaside house that this collection was no longer in an appropriate setting. So the couple were ready to set their sights on something new. It was the great connoisseur of old master paintings, Peter Sutton, who encouraged them to start collecting Dutch masters from the 17th century. At that time, Sutton was curator of European painting at the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, and at present he is director of the Bruce Museum in Greenwich, and He will join us tomorrow for a discussion, as was mentioned earlier. In the late 1980s, Sutton not only introduced Eijk and Rosemarie to collectors, dealers, and art fairs in Europe and the United States, but also helped to familiarize them with the works that were offered for sale. In these early years, they collected eagerly, buying at auctions as well as in the art trade. The acquisition of each painting is a story in itself. It all started with two landscapes, one of them being this work by Nicolaas Berchem, the other one a work by Jan van Gooyen. Both paintings are still in the collection today, as are the still lifes by Bossart, I showed you earlier, and De Korte, still life. Many other paintings, however, acquired in these early years of collecting have been sold since. There was one, I don't have a slide of it, I do want to mention it. It's a minor work which was kept as some kind of souvenir. It's a painting they acquired in 1993, but it was soon exposed as a copy after Jan Steen's famous painting in the Mauritshuis. It's called The Poultry Yard. I see you smiling. And actually, that's what I wanted to say, because you really can smile about what happened at that time, but I think it was sort of a sobering experience as well. Over the years, as they studied and compared many works of art, Eijk and Rosemarie developed an increasingly discerning eye. And in forming their collection, they drew inspiration from other collectors. And I would like to introduce Hannah, the late Hannah and Edward Carter, who assembled a superb collection of 35 paintings, mostly perfectly preserved cabinet pieces, small paintings, and their collection is now preserved in Los Angeles in the County Museum of Art. And it has been a great challenge to build up a similar or even better collection of their own, yet I think Eijk and Rosemarie have managed just to do that in slightly over 20 years, and it was mentioned by Jock, their collection is really the most important private collection of 17th century Dutch paintings in the world. Period. And that is remarkable because there are many rivals, and these rivals are museums or other private collectors. At this time, I had to count and I had to consult the collectors. The collection numbers 81 paintings, and they are still actively buying. A few Flemish paintings supplement the Dutch works. This Jan Breugel, for instance, an early landscape from 1609, or an attractive still life by Ozias Beard. So this is also in the collection. But to build up a collection of this quality, and of course one naturally needs the necessary budget, but one also needs a certain expertise in the field of art and an understanding of market mechanisms. Starting in October 1995, Simon Levy, and he was the former director of the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, he was closely involved in building the collection. And I'm going to quote Eijk, who said on the subject of this informal advisorship, and I quote, "Those days, in the early 1990s, we were being offered so much that we couldn't see the wood for the trees. What's more, everything looked equally beautiful to our eyes. But we didn't want to do anything stupid, and so we knew we needed help." End of quote. From then on, they deliberated carefully over every purchase, as is clear from the detailed correspondence between Levy and the collectors. Many factors played a role in their acquisitions, and that is clear from a short list that Eijk van Otterloo sent to Levy. The collectors wanted to know everything about the subject of the painting, the importance of the artist, the work's place in the artist's oeuvre, its rarity, its provenance, its condition, and last but not least, the asking price. Whenever they were considering buying a painting, they looked closely at the condition of the canvas or panel. Some of the paintings were already in excellent condition when they purchased them. In other cases, they have had them restored. During their stay in a conservation studio, the appearance of many paintings has been radically improved by removing yellowed layers of varnish and replacing old retouches. There are many examples to be given, but I think the best example is this painting by Jan van de Capelle, Boats in a Calm. It's from 1651. And this appeared at an auction in London almost 10 years ago. And well, it's clear the before and after. Close inspection of the painting at that time made clear that a layer of old varnish concealed the subtle tonalities of the otherwise remarkably well-preserved marine painting. And it was transformed after a cleaning in a restoration studio. And well, it's really easy to see that with these images. With its pearl gray nuances of huge clouds and the wet haziness hanging above the steely surface of the water, I think the painting is among the greatest seascapes in Western painting. Gradually, I think the collection became more cohesive, since acquisitions were assessed partly for their relationship to the paintings that were already present. And it was 1996 when Lévy started on a plan devoting systematic attention to the collection, and that is something that we actually also have done in the Mauritshuis. Since the Otterloo collection was intended to give a representative overview of Dutch Golden Age painting, this plan was meant to identify gaps. And it was on the basis of a thematic grouping that the main exponents were identified for each genre, and then also that these masters, that only the finest works would then be purchased. This precisely formulated collection plan enabled the Van Otterloos to weigh their decisions on new acquisitions more carefully. And it goes without saying that it is impossible to draw up what I call a shopping list, since one is always dependent on what is offered for sale. But a wish list is always useful. And yet, the collectors buy what they love. In 1997, they made an important purchase that I already mentioned in passing. It's the Albert Cuyp. And something happened with this acquisition because it was an expensive painting. And to make the purchase possible, Eijk and Rosemarie sold several works that were of relatively inferior quality or less well preserved. And this was actually a decision that was not made overnight. It was a difficult decision. It was not the only time that paintings were replaced by other, better works to raise the average quality of the collection. And as years went by, the couple purchased less, and what they bought was of the highest quality, even though prices continued to rise. The Nicolaas Maas, I'm showing you the painting here. It was acquired in 2002, and in my eyes, this was something of a triumph, as we only know 30 genre paintings by the artist, and of these 30 paintings, nearly all of them are in museum collections. This particular painting was for a long time in a castle in Wales. It led a rather hidden existence, and that was until the Van Otterloos managed to acquire it. Almost 10 years ago, the collection was elevated to a higher order, and that was when this painting was purchased, Rembrandt's 1632 portrait of Aaltje van Uylenburg. And since then, I think this is, the collection's undisputed pièce de résistance. We know a lot about Aaltje. She was a cousin, actually, of the Amsterdam art dealer Hendrik van Uylenburg, and that was the art dealer where Rembrandt was actually living and working at the time. The detailed brushwork is characteristic of Rembrandt's style in that period. I'm showing you a detail of that face. In my eyes, this is the Rembrandt all collectors would like to have. Just look into the eyes of Aaltje. Don't you just love her? Rosemarie van Otterloo calls this painting, which came from a celebrated collection of the Rothschild family, and I'm going to quote Rosemarie, "the jewel in the crown of our collection," end of quote. To purchase the Rembrandt, a process that took, some 3 years, the Van Otterloos again sold a group of paintings, 18 works in total. And 2 advisors were involved in this radical decision. Simon Lévy, I mentioned him, the former director of the Rijksmuseum, but also Frits Duparc, who was at that time the director of the Mauritshuis, and who in the meantime has succeeded Lévy as the couple's official advisor. When it came to deciding which works should be sold, the list of suggestions from both Levy and Duparc, they drew up separate lists, and actually they were almost containing the same paintings. I think there was a difference of only one. Also, the collectors made a list, and in the end, 18 paintings were sold, including works by Van der Heyden, Mienze Molenaar, Salomon van Ruisdael, and Wouwerman. Rembrandt's Aaltje, as she is lovingly called by the collectors, has in fact never been hung at home, but has always been displayed in what I call the public domain. Shortly after its acquisition, it was shown for some time in the Mauritshuis, opposite Rembrandt's famous painting of Dr. Nicolaas Tulp performing an anatomy lesson, which is from the same year. And later, in the spring of 2008, Aaltje moved to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston. And this made newspaper headlines with the Art Daily heading, and I quote, "Superb Rembrandt painting makes its US debut at the Museum of Fine Arts," end of quote. Eijk and Rosemarie enjoy the attention that Aaltje commands among museum visitors. And this was actually not the only painting that was sent straight to a museum after its acquisition. In 2006, this painting by Salomon van Ruisdael was transferred on long-term loan to the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam, which had been obliged to return a similar painting to its rightful owner. A year later, when the Van Otterloos bought Jan Bot's large Italianate landscape, I think it's the artist's masterpiece, they immediately transferred it to Los Angeles to the J. Paul Getty Museum, which had actually tried to buy the work for its own collection. Another leading American museum, the National Gallery of Art in Washington, also usually displays a number of paintings from the collection, including this painting by Esaias van der Velde, which is an elegant company in a garden. The Van Otterloo's ongoing activities prove that collecting 17th century Dutch paintings has in no sense come to a standstill. It is a commonplace that artists from the Dutch Golden Age produced an enormous number of paintings. A key characteristic of these painters is that they produced virtually all their work for the free market. And because there are almost no records of commission, paintings still turn up that have never been published and are completely unknown, even to connoisseurs. Paintings by great masters, even some by major artists such as Rembrandt, Hals, and Steen, are therefore still being discovered up to the present day. While the quality of the supply is declining, plenty of scope remains. But timing is of the essence when seeking to acquire attractive, superior Dutch paintings, since there will always be competition. I already mentioned, of course, the competition from other private collectors as well as museums. That opportunities still abound is clear from the recent acquisitions made by Rosemarie and Eijk. And these are all major paintings, such as The View of Haarlem by Gerrit Bergheide, which is an unusually attractive work whose whereabouts had long been unknown. During a restoration, the discolored varnish layer was removed, showing the painting to be in remarkably good condition. It is now on view here at Yale, together with a highly attractive breakfast piece, which is actually painted by Peter Klaas and dated 1638. Another masterpiece on view, these paintings are just so good, they're almost all masterpieces, is a work by Jan Steen, who is a very versatile artist. He made many paintings. And this interior scene was painted with great bravura, depicting a woman cheating at a card game, as you see. And don't you love, there's one detail, I think you have already spotted it. They have something with animals, and I just love the sleeping dog. Three years ago, the collection was published by Yale University Press in an official catalog that was authored by Fritz Duparc. It's a huge volume that gives a comprehensive overview of the 67 paintings belonging to the collection at that time, and gives you all kinds of details on the provenance, exhibition history, and literature of all the paintings. that the publication of this catalog was by no means, that the publication was by no means an indication that the collection was seen as completed is clear from the 14 paintings that were acquired in the last 4 years, and a sizable supplement is already in the works. When questioned about their plans for the future, the collectors say that they still have a wish list of future acquisitions. And of course, I cannot divulge too much detail, but they did mention a few names that I can mention, names that are still missing from the collection. Hendrik ter Bruggen, Pieter de Hoog, Judith Leister, 3 artists whose work is extremely rare and therefore seldom offered for sale. Still, one never knows what the future may bring. Eijk and Rosemarie are also deliberating about the best future location for their collection, for they are determined that this collection, which is their life's work, will be preserved intact. How and where they're going to make the collection permanently accessible to the public in the future has not yet been settled. However, they hope that it can be preserved in the United States, which is the country where they made the fortune that made all this possible. The current exhibition provides a fine opportunity to contemplate this destination in more concrete terms. But for all of us, the present exhibition, which will be on show here for half a year, is a unique opportunity to see paintings from this magnificent collection. It is an excellent introduction to Dutch 17th century painting, and walking through the galleries, one cannot help feeling that Rosemarie and Eijk now have many of the best Dutch paintings in the world. Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Quentin. I just wanted to mention, because I didn't say this in my introductory remarks, is that we do have these 30 paintings here for a 6-month period, but this exhibition is going to change and rotate, and there's going to be actually 2 years of borrowing and teaching and close looking from this collection. I'm not going to tell you which of the pictures that you saw in this great lecture of Quentin's are going to appear here. Let that be a bit of a mystery, but let us just say that this opportunity that you've given us has defined a new version of an American phrase known as Dutch treat. Thank you so much. Let's go out and have some refreshments together. Thank you.